Nelson Mandela, the personal sacrifices behind the icon, Part 1. This video could explore Mandela's life beyond his public role, delving into the personal sacrifices he made for the anti-apartheid movement. It would cover his early years, his dedication to justice, and how his activism affected his family relationships, particularly his marriage to Evelyn Mase, and the impact on his children. The video could also reflect on how Mandela's family life added depth to his character, showing the human side of a global icon. Here's an outline for the video. 1. Introduction to Nelson Mandela, brief overview of his role in the anti-apartheid movement and his global legacy. 2. Early life and influence, his background in the Thembu royal family and his education. 3. Marriage to Evelyn Mase, how they met, the beginnings of his activism, and the strain on their relationship. 4. Family sacrifices, the impact on his children, the loss of Thembekile, and Mandela's inability to attend the funeral. 5. Divorce and personal costs of activism, how his devotion to freedom led to their separation, and the aftermath for Evelyn. 6. Legacy of personal sacrifice, how his family's sacrifices contributed to his vision and leadership. 7. Reflection and inspiration, what Mandela's personal journey teaches us about resilience, commitment, and the cost of social change. Nelson Mandela's life was defined by his extraordinary dedication to justice, equality, and freedom. Here are more details about his journey, legacy, and influence. Early life and education. Nelson Ralilela Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the small village of Mbizo in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. He was part of the Thembu royal family of the Xhosa-speaking people. Though initially named Ralilela, meaning troublemaker in Xhosa, he was later given the English name Nelson by a teacher at his primary school. Mandela attended several mission schools before enrolling at the University of Fort Hare, one of the few institutions in South Africa where Black Africans could pursue higher education at the time. It was there he met Oliver Tambo, who would later become a lifelong friend and ally in the anti-apartheid struggle. Although Mandela was expelled from Fort Hare for participating in a student protest, he later completed his law degree at the University of South Africa. Nelson Mandela's family. Nelson Mandela's family played a significant role in his life and was deeply affected by his political activism and long imprisonment. Here's an overview of Mandela's family, including his parents, siblings, wives, and children. Parents and siblings. Father. Gadla Henry Mfakaniiswa Mandela was a chief and a member of the Thembu royal family. He was a traditional leader and advisor to the Thembu king but was stripped of his chieftainship due to a dispute with colonial authorities. His father's leadership role influenced Mandela's own values and sense of justice. Mother. Nosekeni Fanny was his father's third wife, and she raised Mandela in Kunu, a small village where he enjoyed a rural childhood. Siblings. Mandela had 3 full siblings, 2 sisters, Namafu and Mabel Notenku, and a younger brother, George. He also had several half-siblings from his father's other marriages. Wives and marriages. Mandela was married 3 times, and each wife was significant in his life. 1. Evelyn Mase, 1944 to 1958. Evelyn Toko Mase was an influential figure in Nelson Mandela's early life, though she lived a relatively private life after their separation. Here's a closer look at her background, relationship with Mandela, and life after their marriage. Early life and background. Evelyn Mase was born in 1922 in Inkobo, a small town in the Transkei region of South Africa. She belonged to the Xhosa ethnic group and grew up in a rural community. Mase trained as a nurse, which was one of the few professional careers accessible to Black women in South Africa at the time. Meeting Nelson Mandela. Evelyn moved to Johannesburg for work and lived with her cousin, Walter Sisulu, and his wife, Albertina Sisulu. Walter Sisulu, who was an influential figure in the African National Congress, ANC, and a close ally of Mandela, introduced her to Mandela. At the time, Mandela was studying law and beginning his involvement in the anti-apartheid movement. Evelyn and Mandela were drawn to each other and got married in 1944. Marriage to Mandela. Evelyn and Nelson's marriage coincided with Mandela's increasing dedication to the anti-apartheid struggle. In the early years, Evelyn was supportive, but as Mandela became more politically active, his commitment began to take a toll on their family life. Mandela would often be away for extended periods, organizing protests, attending meetings, and eventually co-founding the ANC Youth League. Evelyn, on the other hand, had a more traditional outlook and was deeply religious, identifying as a Jehovah's Witness. This faith emphasized neutrality in political matters, so Evelyn found it difficult to reconcile her beliefs with Mandela's increasingly radical activism. She reportedly encouraged Mandela to choose between his activism and his family, but Mandela felt his duty was to the struggle for freedom and justice. Children. Evelyn and Mandela had 4 children. 1. Thembekile, Thembi Mandela. Their firstborn son, Thembi, was born in 1945. He tragically died in a car accident in 1969 while Mandela was imprisoned. The loss deeply affected Mandela, who was not allowed to attend Thembi's funeral. 2. Makaziwe Mandela. Their first daughter, Makaziwe, was born in 1947 but died as an infant, which was a heartbreaking event for the family. 3. Makaziwe Mandela Amua. Born in 1954 and named after her deceased sister, she was their second daughter. Known as Maki, she grew up to pursue her own career in business. 4. Makatho Mandela, their second son, Makatho, was born in 1950. He became a lawyer and also struggled with health issues. He passed away in 2005 due to AIDS-related complications, and Mandela publicly acknowledged his son's illness to help destigmatize HIV/AIDS. Divorce and later life. By the mid-1950s, the ideological and personal differences between Evelyn and Mandela became irreconcilable. Mandela's dedication to activism and his frequent absence due to the demands of the struggle strained their relationship. Evelyn, feeling increasingly isolated and dissatisfied, eventually filed for divorce, and they separated in 1958 after 14 years of marriage. After the divorce, Evelyn lived a more private life, focusing on raising her children and her religious beliefs. She married a businessman, Simon Rakepile, and continued to work as a nurse. She kept a low profile, largely staying out of public view and distancing herself from the political spotlight that surrounded Mandela. Evelyn did not often speak publicly about Mandela or their marriage, though she is said to have expressed disappointment about the impact of his activism on their family life. Legacy and later years. Evelyn Mase passed away in 2004 at the age of 82. Her children and grandchildren have carried forward her memory, and she remains an important, yet often understated figure in Mandela's personal history. Although her life took a different path from Mandela's, she was a foundational part of his early years, standing by him during the beginning stages of his journey in the anti-apartheid movement. Evelyn's story represents the personal sacrifices made by the families of activists and highlights the complexities of balancing family with a commitment to a political cause.